Hey there guys, this is Obsidian Chill. Got another video for you today. Now, I did mention that I was going to make a video along these lines back when I did my feature upload video a couple weeks ago. And I recently, I guess you could say, got triggered, quotation marks, from a few videos. And I'm seeing more videos every day along those lines. And now that I'm starting to get back into my guide series, I switched to electric right now. I should have the electric in-depth guide out this week, probably within the next 3 or 4 days, depending on how I can get in raids for some footage. But I have all my rotations figured out and locked in. And then I'll continue on. I think the order I'm going to go in is electric, nature, sork, water, and then last will be celestial. That'll be the order that I'm doing the healer guide series in. So that brings us to the point where talking about DPS testing standards, because everyone that can upload via Share Factory or Fraps or whatever PC recording program they have is a DPS expert, and you'll see the same videos on every single channel, but people saying they have the best rotations or whatever. That's just a part of the DCO YouTuber, the DCO YouTube experience. But what we need to do is, as a community, or if you're uploading DPS videos, you need to follow certain guidelines so that there's comparisons that can be made amongst all the power sets, so they last longer, and the videos can be more relevant for the future. So I wanted to I tried really hard to want to make this video as like the new, calm, well-mannered Obsidian Chill that most of you guys have come to find on this channel. And then the other half of me wants to make the old Obsidian Chill videos where I'm roasting people for their mistakes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to meet in the middle. I'm going to compromise. The first half of this video is going to be the calm, well-mannered Obsidian Chill, showing you the step-by-step breakdown of what we should be striving towards as DPS testing standards, and I'll talk about what I mean by that. And then the end of the video, I will be the old Obsidian Chill, where I roast people for their mistakes. So if you want to stay for the first part, great. If you want to leave before the final part or see that, great. But so what I mean by DPS upload testing standards is what everyone should be showing in each and every video they do. If you're going to make a DPS guide or a DPS loadout video, this is what you need to show at some point in each video that you do. Okay, so the first part, the very first thing you should do in the video is you need to show your gear, your stats, and the artifacts you're using. Because we need to know if you're buffed. Are you running on a nitro? Are you running on a mega? Because you shouldn't be testing and parsing on buff stats anyway, because you're not always going to be buffed in the raid. It's going to throw people off. So if we see that little green target symbol, we know you're running buffed. We also need to know what artifacts you're running, because say if you're running the Tetrahedron of Ungren, if you're running that artifact, then you're going to be getting a might buff while you're DPSing. So we need to account for that, in our minds. You don't need to show your stats during or after your buffs or your escalating might and everything like that. We just need to know your base might beforehand, so we can compare, or the person watching your video can compare rotations. If we have no idea what your might is, have no idea what your gear is, no idea what artifacts you're running, we don't know if you even are competent and know what you're doing. And B, if we're testing ourselves, like we see your CR 240, 245, 250, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's the game DPSing is not based on the CR scaling system, or it's based on more of your stats. So if you are CR 240 but have like 20k might, and we're seeing those numbers you're getting are really trash, so it's like, well, I'm getting way better parsers, but I also have 30k might or 35k might. So it needs to be comparison. Also, if you have like a really high might, like near the top, like all your augments are maxed out, all your gears maxed out. Like if you're at that level, we need to know, okay, my parsers aren't as good as his, but that's because he's got 2,000 more might than I do. Like it comes down to common sense. Like if we have no idea what your stats and what you're testing and parsing at, we have no basis of comparison. A, as a player, B, as a fellow YouTuber, no idea. You've left us completely in the dark. Okay, so the second part, the most important thing you can possibly have in your DPS loadout video or DPS guide video or in-depth DPS guide, whatever video you're uploading, you need to have the combat parsers up. You can, if you don't know where it is, you can see the picture here on the screen. It's under your settings gameplay tab. There's basically, I've seen people set it to in combat. I've seen people set it to every different kind of thing. But you want to have, there's basically two. Ideally, you want 30 seconds. That's the most ideal way for a parse because it doesn't account for as much of the the gimmicky crits you can see in the 10-second. It's a better overall picture of your DPS potential for that rotation. I'm not going to be hypocrite. I run mine at 10 seconds because basically 9 times out of 10 for my power sets, I can't sustain a 30-second parser for power. I design my rotations to be used with power. And I'm not going to grab a troll just to test. And if I'm testing with a troll, if I'm doing weapon tap damage, it's going to throw that off because I'm going to get the precision buff from the troll. A precision player can't parse with a troll either because he's getting the buffs from the recharge. So ideally, well, you could say you could give power time, but it's the same thing. 10 seconds is completely fine, but you need to show multiple ones. You can't just show one 10-second parser. Like your dots wouldn't have finished ticking. So like a 10-second parse is not indicative of anything either. You need to show multiple 10-second ones. If you show 3 or 4 or 5, that's fine. For me personally, I like the 10-second parsers because it gives me a better idea of burst damage. There's not too many fights where you're going to last 30 seconds, especially on ads. Like some of the newer raids you would, but most of the time ads are dying within 20 seconds anyway. So I want to see how much damage I'm pushing out in a shorter window. That's why I run 10 seconds in addition to having the power requirements. So 10 seconds, show multiple 10-second parsers. If it's 30, show obviously a few 30 as well. Like if I'm doing like my big artifact testing, that kind of stuff, then I'll use either 30. I use 60-second parsers when I test the artifacts. So then, or not artifacts, the trinkets damage, the pet damage. So the different combo parsers are going to be different for situations, but you at least need 10 seconds and show multiple, a few 30 seconds, 60-second if you're testing like supercharges or trinkets or pets or whatever. But you need the parsers. Not only do we need to see is that a comparison tool. So if you're parsing, if you say your loadout's amazing, don't show any parsers, then someone else goes and parses it, and it's like it's like 18K on 3 targets or something like that. Obviously, it's like, well, that's a trash loadout. Like, obviously, what the hell that guy is doing? I've seen people base their rotations off like, oh, look at that 20K hit and like this 10K hit. Like this rotation is so good, and then you parse it and it's terrible. So 9 times out of 10, well, actually 10 times out of 10, if you don't see a parser in a DPS video, just ignore that video completely. 9 times out of 10, almost 10 times out of 10, because that shows that player is not even competent enough to know the tools that's available to him to test properly. He's just basing his rotation off whatever. If he's not going to take the time to show you any parsers, then you can't trust him as a DPS because he's not competent enough to even A, want to help you, B, compare his rotations against someone else's, and C, show you what you actually should be doing and working towards. Because the other thing about the damage parsers is not so much showing the damage. I've seen people say, "Oh, it does 300,000 damage in 30 seconds or 10 seconds." I don't look at those numbers. I'm looking, the damage per second, those parser numbers. That's what I want to see. I'm not looking at how much overall damage you did. Some people want to compare it like that, but that's not. It's how much damage per second you're doing. That's why it's called DPS. The other big thing I'm looking for is the crit percentage. If you get some like amazing parser and you're like, oh yeah, I parsed like 30K on single target, I want to see what that crit percentage was. I want to see if the crits were at like high 30s or low 40s or even in the 50s. Then you can take that parser and was like, well, yeah, he got that high the such high crits on everything. That's why his parser was so good. As you go through testing, you'll see what your average crit percentage is. Usually I'm in like the mid 20s. So if I'm testing something and I get like a low parse, and then I look at the crits and it says like 15, 17% crit, then I know, okay, well, I can't really take that into real consideration because such low crits. Same thing if I test a rotation at 10 seconds and get like a 30 or 40K crit percentage, I know, well, yes, that was really fun and cool and high numbers, but I can't trust that because it crit way more than everything else. So it's like it shows the potential what it can do, and it shows what the lower potential it is. So parsers are really, really important, and you need to see that in any video you do for DPS. Okay, so on to part 3. In terms of the sparring targets, everyone's going to have access to a league or have a league themselves. You want to be using the 3 sparring targets, ideally, in your league hall, in the war room. You can also use the 8 targets. There's not too many instances where you're going to have 8 targets or more. That's more to test your damage splitting. Like if you're rage or electric or sorg or whatever, like whatever power set your is, if you want to see how much your damage splitting is, you can kind of get an idea from going to the 3 target to the 8. But ideally, if you're doing a video, you should be doing 3 targets. Do not be in the war room or of the watchtower. Don't be using those sparring targets. Don't test a single target rotation on 3 targets. Don't test a AoE rotation on single target. It's just, once again, that should be common sense, but you'd be surprised how many times I see in videos people in the watchtower doing loadout guides on the single targets. They may have their parses up, but they're also hitting the sparring target that's behind. So then you're not getting a single target or 3 targets. You're getting 2 targets, and it just screws up all the numbers. And half the time, another example, as you'll see in the picture on the left from my munitions guide, you're gonna have power sets that CC the sparring targets. It's gonna knock them away. So you have to maybe position yourself so that doesn't happen. You can also put a base item between like a bench or something in front and behind, and then have someone sitting in the base item editor in your league hall so that it can't be destroyed. So then you can DPS and not have the sparring targets move. Because as you can see, my missions, my iconic loadout, stuff like that, you're going to have some rotations that the PIs are just going to spread the targets everywhere, and your parses are going to be lower because you're missing damage. So it's hard to test from that aspect. But it's very important that you test AoE rotations on AoE sparring targets, and you test single target rotations on single target sparring targets. Common sense. Okay, so part 4, in terms of what not to do in the videos, don't use supply drops, trinkets, and supercharges while you're showing your rotation. Do that after the fact or in your DPS video if you're showing examples, but don't say, here's my rotation, and then drop everything you have and then do it and show your numbers, because that's not helping anyone. That's way too situational. Don't use the after combat parser. I see that so many times. After combat parser is not, once again, not helping anyone understand the damage potential of your rotation. Don't show your combat log. That's one of the common sense. If I'm looking at your video and looking for the parsers, I don't need to see a super fast scrolling half-second list through your chat box showing all the little ticks and dots and hits. I can see it on the screen, and it doesn't matter. They're not important anyway. Like I said, only the parsers are important in the damage summary. Don't not show your mods if you're going outside the norm. Like, say in my videos, sometimes for single target, I use the critical attack mods for the 2% crit. But if I'm going to do that, I'm going to tell you guys I'm doing it, so you can account for that when I'm doing my single target rotation. It's like, okay, he changes his mod each time. And then this is just a personal thing, but don't use the friggin' cliche all cap titles that I continually always see every day. Insane, beast, godly, unbeatable. I've called out so many YouTubers for that in the past and roasted so many different YouTubers for that, because 9 times out of 10, if you have a title like that, it's most likely a trash video anyway. Like, I understand the whole need to like grab attention of people in the search box, but if your content is good enough quality, you can post it on the forums. People will find your videos if they are good, or show them in game or whatever. Like, there's plenty of ways to grow popularity. Like, look at my channel. Like, I deleted my channel. I had 0 subs when I came back a year and a bit ago. I had 0 subs. I uploaded some old videos just to kind of show them, and look where I am today. Like, I post sometimes on the forums, but most of the time it's just through people searching, and I don't have any of those dumbass cliche titles in my guides either. I'll use in depth. I've used best a couple times just because I felt it was the best, but I'm not using all caps cliche titles. That's just a pet peeve of mine, and I like to call people on it a lot. Warning: if you get easily offended, please stop watching. Okay, so now that I've warned everyone, we'll go into, based on the 4 parts that I show in the video, we'll show what not to do. And it really doesn't take much. If you type in DPS loadout, DC numbers online, you filter it by a month just to get, or at least I do, to get the most recent stuff. And we've got some fairly, evident examples here. So let's go into this one. Doesn't take much to see. So now in this one, I'm not going to talk about him as a player because I've got no idea who he is or his skill level. I'm just basing off what he's showing in his all capitals DCO insane electric DPS loadout. He's just used a supercharged testing single target. There's no damage parsers. There's no combat log, even though we shouldn't have the combat log up, but at least there's nothing showing any type of results. You see the green target, so he's buffed in the video, but doesn't show any of his stats. At least he shows his loadout. He's also using backup, which is the worst damage that you can possibly have. If he runs a boo will triple the damage of a backup trinket. So it just speaks to, like, if you're watching a video on insane electric DPS loadout, and look, 1,700 people have seen it, and it's recent. So to me, it plays to the competency of the actual player that's showing us this, and half the time, like, you don't learn anything from watching these. Yeah, sure, you can get a loadout. You don't know how good this loadout is. I can tell you right now, his single target rotation is trash. And even though I run a different AoE rotation, it doesn't really matter as much as with the AoE. Like, you'll see mine later, but I still feel that mine Parse is better. But it's the same powers. It's just the order that you do it. But I can't really fault that. But he's not even doing a full parser rotation length. Like, even if he had 10 seconds on, he's not even doing 10 seconds of DPSing. And I know his 10 seconds doesn't really show you much as electric because you're still going to have dot stakings. That's why you want the 30 seconds with electric or a whole bunch of 10s. So, but we don't have any of that. So this is a primary example, and there's many more to come in his all capitals insane electric DPS loadout. And let's go to this one here. This guy actually has some decent rotations. Like, I can't fault his rotations. They're actually quite good. It's just, and he's uploaded other ones in the past. Like, obviously, he makes DPS guides, but why? Why would you not, like, he's got the combat log up and he's got his little tiny chat and, like, in large text, so we can't see jack shit what's going on. And if he shows us, well, he's using like a pure chainsaw loadout on 3 targets. This rotation is completely designed just for the sparring targets. I can tell you that because I was hard light testing. If you try to do that in like TTBE or anything with any kind of interrupts, you're going to get wrecked using a pure chainsaw loadout because you're always going to get stunned out of it. And just as you saw, so he's got his combat log up, scrolling away super fast, and then he cuts to a screenshot of the parsers. We have no idea when those parsers happened. They could have just been taken, like, handpicked the best results. So we can't actually see the parsers, what he's actually doing, because it skips by so quickly. So it's like, this is an example of a guy who at least, obviously he's competent. He knows he can make rotations, even though I disagree with the pure chainsaw one, but that's a topic for a different video, or a different time. But at the same time, obviously he knows what he's doing. But why have the combat log up? Why not just have parsers? He's not running buffed, and I can't remember if he showed his might or not in this video. He might not have, because most people don't think to do that, even though it's common sense. But the same thing is, get rid of the combat log, just show your parsers. That's all we need to see for comparison. And then we jump to this special snowflake. And when I think of this gentleman and his channel, or not even his channel, but when he uploads DPS guides, considering that he does have a significant amount of subscribers and 22,138 people are more stupid for watching this video, that's the scary part. That's why I'm making all these guides and in-depth guides and putting as much effort as I do into them, because I realize that players are out watching channels like this, and that's why the player base is the way it is, because they're watching the wrong people, or they're watching people that aren't competent. So we'll just cut to a little clip here. This is what goes through my mind when I see channels like this.
There are some inconsistencies in your story, like every fucking thing that you said.
So we've got no combat log, no parsers. He's on the Hall of Doom sparring targets. So any results, he's hitting, his dots are hitting on both sparring targets. So you've got unreliable numbers from that. He's using an AoE rotation on a single target parser, on a single target dummy. Not showing stats. Where else do I want to begin here? I'm not going to play the audio in the clip, but if you listen to him, he's like, "Oh yeah, that just hit for 20K. That's good. If you did, if that hit for 5K, that's 10K, 20K. So this rotation has to be good because I'm hitting for 20 and 30Ks. So it's like that's the mindset. So it's like, holy crap! Like at least he's not using like the cliche titles. Like that would be over the top for me if he's using like all those cliche titles and then on top of everything else in the video. So it's just like it's if you're going to make DPS loadout guides, or if you're going to try to teach the community about something, if you're going to try to help the community, you have to be, it's common sense. You're testing DPS, show a parser. That's common sense. If you see a video, everyone else is doing 3 targets. I should do 3 targets as well. Like I should do single target. I should do range. Should do a melee. Like this is all common sense to me. If you're going to try to help the community or share what you're doing or what you find success with, honestly, it goes beyond me sometimes. Like I know this is a stupid thing to like get upset or stress about, but it's like my goal has always been to help the DC community as well as as much as I can, whether it be showing them how to do stuff or like how no death raids or defeats are done or whatever. As survival mode, my recent in-depth guides. This is what I want to show. This is what my goal is. So when I see thousands of other people watching a video like this, it's a detractor because now there's 2,000 people out there that are using a horrible rotation and like don't understand how to test or what they should be doing to test it and try to improve. They're just going to assume this is what they should use because the YouTuber used it. They're not going to try to take anything on themselves and not understand why when they're actually in a raid and doing poorly, it's because of them not even having the knowledge to parse properly and test properly.